Hi, I'm Mary Lyons, the Wealth Woman.
I'm Eric Alexander with Acorn Grove.
Welcome to the Wealth and Income Podcast.
Nailed
Today,
it.
well, right? I almost actually, though, forgot that I was the Wealth Woman. Like it almost didn't come out right. It's just one of those days. Like,
It
who am
is.
I?
It has been a day.
For sure. Okay, so to the business at
To
hand.
business.
Today, we are going to go through a case study for a client of Eric's that he was able to do a lot of preparation for. And they had some unexpected news that was not positive recently. So we are going to walk through a little bit of what did the world look like, what were they headed toward, and then as there had to be a fairly intense pivot, how did things change?
Yeah, and these are some of my favorite people. It's funny. It's like kids. Like you're not supposed to have favorite clients, but you kind of do. And these are really just a lot of fun to work with. And we've known them for a long time. And so we were doing the deal, right? We had like a really, really healthy mix between the investment side of the world, the insurance side of the world. They were completely balanced. They're ready to go. They're rocking along to go do that. He had started a new company, was doing kind of the best part of the consulting that he used to do, and was just kind of living the deal, right? And everything was on track and all that stuff. And we were on track to do full income replacement, which is kind of the best part of it.
So I want to start kind of at the very beginning with this client, just so we paint a very, very full picture of what's happening. How long ago did you start working with this couple?
2012. So it's been 12 years.
More
Yeah.
than a decade. So these are people that you've developed like a really not just a client relationship with, but a friendship with.
Yeah.
And you look at how long you've been doing this, it's 15 years, give or
Yeah.
take.
So very new in the business still.
Right. So this is a client that got to grow up with you. And I think that that's always fun because you get to see how people are evolving, how their life is changing. You get to be there when they're having kids or their kids are graduating, and you really become kind of a part of their life in a lot of ways. And they become a part of yours
Yeah.
as you're having these conversations about how are you going to live out what your dream life is. And so, I think it's also important as we're going into this, especially because we do have new listeners as well, just to talk about a little bit of the philosophy of the planning side of things. So as you were looking at getting to full income replacement,
Right.
how do you actually create that for somebody from start to finish?
Right. Well, my running joke is it's a complicated process involving lasers. But functionally, how we do that, right? Most of the people that come to us, and they were no different. They come to us and they're like, "I've got this business. I'm running this business. It's doing great. It's throwing off cash flow. It's doing the thing, right? And we've got a bunch of investment accounts. I've got an old 401. We need you to help me. We need you to be our advisor." I'm like, "Great. We can do that. If you don't mind, I want to give you another perspective on the universe." I'm starting
Uh-huh.
having this sort of conversation. And the conversation really centered on this idea of if all we have is investments, if it's all market, market, market all the time, growing your business as big as you can get it, that's amazing. You're going to end up with a lot of net worth. You get to talk about it at parties. Everyone's going to think you're awesome. The problem with that is that nobody cares about net worth when they go to the grocery store. I need cash flow at the grocery store. And one of the conversations we've had,
Nowadays. Thank
yeah, oh
you.
my gosh, yeah, no doubt. Uh, we're all excited with inflation at 3.5%. I'm like, yeah, but it's better than
That's what-
9, but it's
Yeah.
still a lot.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail that. I
no,
mean,
no,
I
no,
kind of did mean to derail that, but I didn't really mean to
but it
derail
was
that.
good. So the conversation really centered around this idea that look, a lot of money and a lot of net worth is really important, but when it comes to generating income, because it's all in the market, it's all in the business, things can shift and they do and they will. Really, and the idea that you're going to need more money than birthdays and you don't know how long that's going to be. You
Mhm.
could be on the planet for 40 years after retirement, really pretty easily.
Sure.
And because of that, the distribution rate, if it's an all investments portfolio, is around 3%. So every $1 million you've accumulated, congrats, that's a lot of net worth, but that's only 30 grand in income, and you make a lot more than 30 grand.
So I want to take a minute to address that. So if you're new to the podcast or you just want a refresher on why, we have earlier podcast episodes that really address what is the safe spending rate in retirement in
Right.
great gory detail. So if you want to go
More
and
than you
just,
want.
stab yourself in the eye a couple of times, we suggest that you go and listen to that, because it is important to wrap your arms around what is happening, but you aren't going to feel great when you're listening to it. And even if you don't want to go to the depth of listening to a bunch of podcasts on that, what I would tell you is if you got your phone out and you Googled what is the safe withdrawal rate in
Right.
retirement, 9 out of 10 articles that you're going to read are going to tell you that it ranges from 3 to 4%. Most of the articles that tell you 4% is the safe withdrawal rate number are looking at life expectancy, not life potential.
Right.
And when you look at life potential, the number drops down to about 3%. So that's where that number comes from. And if you're anything like me, when you hear that, you're like, wait a minute, if I save $1 million, I can spend 30 grand a year. There's nothing exciting about that. That is, I just want to go throw up, because what's the point of doing any of this? To me, that's almost the reason that the savings rate in the United States is so bad, is that even if we don't know the math, we're like, what's the point? I'm never going to be able to replace my lifestyle anyway. So this problem is what this podcast is meant to address, right? It's not just the wealth podcast, it's the wealth and income podcast.
Right.
Because this is about finding ways to optimize income strategies and maximize what you get to spend given the resources that you have to invest. And I said that the other day and someone was like, what does that mean? And when I say the resources that you have to invest, I mean, how much money are you actually putting away?
Right.
And if Eric and I are both putting the same amount of money away, it's not necessarily whoever earns the highest rate of return is going to get to spend the most money.
Right.
It's the balance between your growth rate and how much you can safely spend each year. So we spend a fair amount of time looking at how are we going to grow your assets. But on the podcast, I think almost always we're talking about, but how do you change the income? Because that is the whole point of putting the money away in the first place, is that you're trying to create an income stream.
Yeah.
So at a high level, how do you do that?
Well, and to that point, right, when we've started doing some preliminary math, and I don't know, we've talked about it before, but when you look at what I would call the 4 layers or the 4 levers of how we go create income, I either save more, I work longer, I get a better rate of return, or I make the system more efficient. And what we keep finding, and we're still working on the math on it, is the efficiency part of it counts for much, much more than any of the other 3.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes I can't save more. Sometimes I can't work longer. Sometimes shooting for a better rate of return.
You certainly can't guarantee a higher rate of return.
Right. And I can't guarantee and then this podcast and this particular case study proves it. Sometimes I may not get the vote to go work longer. Right. Because that may have been part of my plan. I'm going to build the business bigger. I'm going to go work longer. I'm going to do more. Right. The only thing that I have control over is the efficiency in the system. And the coolest part about that was the thing that I have the most control over, efficiency, is also the thing that makes the biggest difference. And I think for the first time in a long time, it's helped us shift that script in people's brains. We talked about this with the conversation on currents. It shifted the script from, wait, I can do this. Like I have control. There's efficacy here that before it was just to open a prayer and who cares, and I'm never going to get to that point anyway. So just YOLO and just go on. Right. I've already given up before I started. But once we started understanding that the efficiency was both the biggest impact and the thing for which you had the most control over, it's like all of a sudden the lights start turning back on. It's like, oh, well, this is possible for me.
Right. So high level, the way we do that is we use a combination of investments and permanent life insurance. Right. And specifically, we use whole life insurance when we're doing this. And so when you look at what is actually happening, we're changing the distribution from I have to take money out of the stock market every year, whether the stock market is up or down, right? Which can deplete my portfolio if the market's down and I'm taking more money out. And then as the market tries to recover, if I'm withdrawing the recovery, it literally can't recover. Right. So what we want to do is create alternate distribution strategies. So alternate number 1 is creating something that feels just like a pension, where when you get to retirement, you take the money out of the stock market and you annuitize it. So you get an income every single year. and you optimize the income stream by doing it on a single life instead of on the lives of both people.
Right.
And then when that person passes away, the permanent death benefit on the whole life policy shows up to replace 100% of the assets that were creating the simulated pension for you. So that was a lot really fast. We have other podcasts where we go into that concept way more in depth. And we do have another one of those that will be coming out shortly where we're doing like a long form deep dive
Right.
into how this works. But option 2 is what we call a market shock absorber or the volatility buffer. Pick and choose. You can call it whatever you want.
Right.
It means the same thing. But in that situation, you leave your money in the stock market when you retire. But if the market has a bad year and you lose money, you respond by discontinuing the withdrawals from the investment account, and you begin taking withdrawals from the cash value of your whole life insurance policy until your investment account has had a full recovery, at which point it is safe to go back to withdrawing to that. And there's rules and ratios and all of that. And at a very high level, the way you know you have done it right is that when you get to retirement, your investment net worth, so think about your net worth excluding your primary residence, anything that is meant to create income from you, that's the part we're looking at. Those are your investments, needs to match equally to the permanent death benefit that you have in place on the day you retire. Doesn't matter if they're out of balance until then, but when you retire, the permanent death benefit needs to be equal to the investment value that you are using to produce income.
Yeah. And so that's, and the fun part of that to me over the years has been, it's not insurance for the sake of insurance. It's not investments for the sake of investments. It is coordinating the team together so that they're working together efficiently.
Right.
And it's not, I want lots and lots of insurance and I don't want lots and lots of investments. It really is about this sort of constant tweaking in the formula as the market grows, as the client moves forward to that number, to slowly tweak that to where we're keeping the seesaw legs sort of balanced. And that's always that model, right?
Well, and interestingly, I had a client recently say to me, well, I don't know if I want to put that much money into an insurance contract. That seems like a lot of concentrated risk. And I said, well, don't you think it's a lot of concentrated risk to have all of that money in the stock market?
Interesting.
And they were like, oh, I guess it is. But I didn't think about it from that perspective before. This
Right.
is essentially diversification. But instead of just diversifying inside of the stock market, you are diversifying outside of the stock market as well, because every different financial tool that's available does a different job. So
Right.
some, like the investments, create high rate of return. Some, like the whole life insurance, change the spending rate when you get to retirement. So that balance is really, really important when you're doing that. So Eric, you did a phenomenal job with this client. You had them perfectly in balance, heading towards that beautiful sunset, everything looking like full income replacement. Even as their income was continuing to go up, we kept adapting. You had all that
Right.
set up for them. And then you got a phone call.
Right. Yeah. So we got a phone call probably 3 weeks ago, about a month ago. And they got the phone call from my friend, the guy that I've been doing most of the work with, him and his wife. He's like, "Hey, so I got some fun news." And he's about my age. He's sort of late 40s, early 50s. And he said, "I just got diagnosed with dementia, with Alzheimer's." Um,
And
and
he's late 40s.
yeah.
I feel like we need to let that sit for a second.
Oh, and his kids are about the same age as my kids. So
So they're
it's,
elementary school, middle school, elementary school age.
yeah, 11 and 12. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's, yeah, it's been a hard month or so with those guys, right? Because I'm friends with them. I want to see them grow and thrive and do things like that. And then I have to sort of put that aside a little bit and be sort of math nerd, right? Of and have a bunch of really hard conversations where over the last few there's is an interesting moment where there's tears almost every call,
Uh-huh.
which is really
Well,
fascinating.
nobody scripts their life this way. So when you
100%.
think about building a financial plan and all the things that you want to have happen, the majority of the conversations that people have with advisors are about what happens when everything goes right. there's sort of a baked in assumption that everything goes right, right? Even the planning we're just talking about, it's about building your dream life and, what it's going to look like and income replacement at retirement. And then you get a call like this, and it's easy to look at that and be like, well, this whole plan is going to derail, except it didn't.
Yeah, it just looks different, right?
Mhm.
And that's been the and it's weird to say, if there weren't a human on the other end of it, it would be a really cool math problem,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
okay, well, how do we pivot? How do we use this differently? How do we put on our thinking cap and go through that? And to me,
Well,
that
I'm going to take a second. I feel like, and I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, but I
you're
think
good.
this needs to be underlined just a little bit. So, this is one of those moments where I have an immense gratitude for the fact that I get to work with you every day. Because if something like that were going to happen to my family, there
Right.
is no better problem solver than you.
Well, and it's if it, like I said, it's a fun problem to solve if there weren't a human.
But that's the beauty of I
Right.
think you as a human too, is that you understand there's a human on the other side and that this is not just a math problem, that it is someone's life and
Well, and
not
they're
and
terrified.
well, and it's two generations of lives, not just one. And
Yeah.
so the way you approach the math problem, and I know this about you because sometimes you're cavalier and it's your defense mechanism, right?
Right, for sure.
Is that because you know there's a human, that's why you want to solve the problem in the first place.
Sure. Like I don't need to do math for its own sake.
Yeah, if it was a theoretical issue, like it wouldn't it wouldn't do the same thing, right? Like the issue here is that you get to look at an issue and figure out, how do I do this in a way that
Right.
people are going to be just fine.
Well, and the challenge on this case has been honestly the imperfect information of all the mortality pieces of it. Like, do I have a 5-year problem? Do I have a 15-year problem? Do I have a 10-year problem? Like, and we don't know, right? And
Mhm.
so, the interesting part of it was sort of sorting through kind of two competing factors. One is the caregiver in that scenario. We talk about him because
Mhm.
he's got the terminal diagnosis. But the impact on the caregiver, his wife at that point, is actually driving most of this.
Right.
Because, and we've had this before with some other clients that have faced similar issues. It's he'll be fine, right?
Or if he's not, he won't know it.
Right. And which is the callous way to go look at it. But yeah, like he'll be fine, right? But she's got to go deal with the caregiving part of it. And then when it's all over and done, she's got to go figure out how to run life and go sort of manage that, if that
Well,
makes
and in the
sense.
meantime, it's not just him she's taking care of, it's their kids too,
Yeah, there's 2 boys on the other
and
side.
herself.
Yeah. And so one of the conversations we had the other day, and this is 2 or 3 weeks ago, was I don't know how long I can continue to work.
Right.
Because she has a full-time job and they've got Social Security disability coming in because of all of this. And so like they've got some good things going on that side of it, and they're not homeless. They've got some good things going. And they've done a really, really good job planning. Like
Mhm.
they've put a lot of money in, they're good savers, they make good choices. And so, it makes my job easier because I'm powerful, I'm not magical. I can come in and go, okay, we're gonna maneuver X, Y, and Z and go get it done. But one of the first things we talked about was, hey, look, we need to get you out of your job, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Well,
you've
when
got to
you know you have
retire.
limited time left with your spouse and the care that your spouse needs is increasing on a daily basis, the last thing you want to do is spend all day
Right,
at work because you know you don't have that much time left. It's not theoretical. It's factual at that point.
right, right. And so, one of the first things we're stepping through at this point, and we've got a couple weeks to go to get it all sorted because of just moving parts. But we're going to take some of the assets that have already been built up. We're going to go move that around and basically go create her what we would do in retirement for a client that wants a pension. So we're recreating that, but today, and have that
Mhm.
pension pay out just enough so that she can get a break, she can quit, she can go take care of him, take care of the family, take care of herself, and do those things. Um, and then reposition the rest of the assets, some so that she's got some long-term care built in because we don't normally have long-term care conversations at 48. Those
Right.
conversations don't usually get started till 50, 55 and beyond, which we have a whole podcast on that we need to go do about. And I think we have about the importance of starting that earlier. But for her, it's like, look, we need to get this done right away because you're healthy right now. And this process is really hard on you or will be hard on you
Right.
physically and emotionally, right?
It will affect your health. Well, and I'm going to take this moment as an aside. I feel like a lot of times when people come in to do planning and they are really just thinking about how they're going to create more income, there are steps that either get skipped or that they don't want to talk about. And I feel like the
Oh,
ones that people don't want to talk about are usually disability,
yep,
long-term care, and having a will. Those are the kind of things that cost grown-up money, and there is nothing
right.
exciting about what you're doing, and they feel like a bill. And so those are the things that people want to delay making decisions on. But those are also some of the things that can be the most important as part of a plan. And they're the pieces that make sure when something goes wrong, that financially everything is still going to be fine,
Yeah.
but there's nothing sexy about them. And I definitely, have had people in the planning process be like, oh my God, how much insurance do I need? And I'm like, well, this much,
Right.
but
Right.
it's not where you want to spend your money.
No, I want a Maserati and a Ferrari and all sorts of other cool things that I want to go do, right? But and I think that's where people in that situation for the first time understand the mortality of what's going on and sort of the fragility of life and all the existential things that we've talked about. But and so, but the first conversation was like, in addition to some of this moving around, we need to make sure that A, you're going to be fine, and we'll talk about that in a second, after he's gone. And we want to make sure that he's fine, but we want to make sure that you're fine and that the legacy that he is, because of the work that he's doing, I want to make sure that the legacy passes on to you. And I want to set you up so that if something happens to you, you don't destroy that legacy because you're sick for a long time and that the kids don't get it. Like
Right. So it's
it's multiple.
everything they were building together will take care of her, right? And then because of the planning now, not only will she have the ability to do that, but she will also have the ability to pass on to the kids.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And it's the fine line, right? How do we, and it's the fine line that we walk through with all clients is that protection versus growth versus income. It's a Rubik's cube that is constantly fighting us. And sometimes it throws us a curveball like this one, but it is that balance in the system. But I think it goes back to mindset, strategy, tools, and that progression is if I've got the mindset right, all the rest of the decisions become much easier to solve.
Well, and you kind of alluded to something earlier that I'm going to rephrase and kind of highlight again here, which is when you're focused on income efficiency, it takes less money to create more income.
Right.
So I want to say that again. When you create income efficiency in your strategy, it takes less money to create more income. So if you are only focused on having more money, that
Right.
doesn't translate to more income, not as
It's
directly as most people think.
right.
But if you're focused on the income efficiency, it means you can create the same or more income with less assets. And then you can use the other assets to make sure the protection components really are taken care of. And
Right.
then once they're taken care of, you can use it to make sure that you have raises baked in to what you're doing. And and I
Right.
think that's it, right? Like we all get so focused on, I just want my money to grow. But when you ask yourself why, the answer is always tied to lifestyle. And so as
Yep.
part of the planning, you got to have the efficiency piece for the income, but you have to make sure that lifestyle is manageable when life throws you curveballs like this, because it's what you talk about theoretically all the time, which is the high probability of low probability events. They're going to happen. We just all like to assume it won't be to us.
Right. Well, and that's the thing when you think through that lever, this idea of savings, I can save more money, I can work longer, I can get better rates of return, I can create a more efficient system. If I can create efficiency, and this is kind of what we did with her, is I'm going to go create efficiency by giving you income today. But what I'm doing because of that, underlying benefit is I've created time on the other end.
Mhm.
We can leave those assets working in the system longer, doing more work and getting bigger because of the efficiency, because we've created not just income for her today, but we've created time for all the rest of the assets to go do their jobs longer before we need them to come into being, before we need them to be pushed into service.
Mhm.
And so that was kind of the first two steps. And then really the back half was sort of optimizing the rest of the cash flow on hand and finding that right balance between liquidity and then making sure that he did a great job insurance planning, making sure that death benefit is sort of maximized and we've got the policies optimized for death benefit and for liquidity, because all I know is that his life is going to become more and more complicated over the next 5-10 years and not in a low cash flow requirement way. It's going to be more complex and require more money. And so anything I can do to sort of boost liquidity on that side of it helps. But if I can boost liquidity and at the same time efficiency again, boost death benefit, then I can solve two problems at once. And that she knows, and it's been really interesting working with her on this side of it. She knows that she's going to be okay today. She can quit her job and be with her family. And she knows that on the other end of this, because of sort of the maneuvering around and the efficiency, she can completely replace her income post for the rest of her life.
He passes away.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just say this because I've seen this with other clients that have had similar situations occur. If you haven't done this type of planning and an event like this happens, it is devastating for most families.
It
And
is.
not just devastating financially, but also emotionally. Because if you can take a minute to put yourself into her shoes, if none of this planning had been done and she knew she was going to be broke on the other end of this, how much resentment do you think would seep in
Oh, yeah.
to the last years that they have together? Whereas because the planning has been done and she can be there with him and knows she is going to be totally fine financially when he is gone, she can lean all the way in to making those last years with him be what she needs them to be. And that's the human element of this that I think we frequently forget, right? Just
Not a
when we're
math problem.
and I mean, as individuals, not as planners, but we walk in and we're like, let's do this thing, as opposed to, because who wants to have these conversations? Let's talk about what really happens if I'm terminally ill and I die after 10 years. That's not like, we don't wake up in the morning and be like, this will be a fun bonding exercise. These are the conversations that we avoid, but they are also the conversations that a financial advisor should, even if you aren't having them, right, in this kind of specific detail, these are the things the advisor should be automatically taking care of for you. But I can tell you right now, if the only conversation that you're having is about how to grow a portfolio, none of the work that needs to be done to make sure that this is your outcome has actually been done.
Well, and
That's a small piece.
yeah, and it reminds me of like I met these clients third year into the business, right? And had they come to me with this problem then, I'd be like, I don't know what the hell to do. Like it just brick wall, right? But I think because of the planning that we had done at the beginning, I didn't have to know how it turned out.
Right.
Right. Because we built it in to be flexible.
Right.
Right.
Well, and
Go ahead.
flexibility is not something that people think of when you say whole life insurance.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
Because this is a combination of investments and insurance tools all around, right? Long-term care insurance, disability insurance, all of those things. Those are not, that flexibility and insurance are not words that normally people would put together, but it's exactly that allowed for this situation. I mean, this is the worst situation one of the worst situations you could ever find yourself in as an individual, as a couple.
For
And
sure.
yet, financially, the best possible outcome is possible.
Yeah, and the interesting part of this, and this is going to sound like it's not a good thing, but I think it was a really positive thing. They got to go on vacation last week. They took some time off and just got to hang out together, which is really great. And one of the things that made me feel like we were doing our jobs right, like we kind of nailed the sweet spot in the middle there, is she got sick on her trip.
Mhm.
And I thought that was really great. Not that she got sick, but it's been my experience is that I always get sick kind of right around Christmas time because it's the first time my body's had a chance to relax all year long. Um, and then you get the break, right? So it was good.
Mhm.
She caught up. So
Right. Yeah, her body had a time. Like, honestly, I think what you're talking about is our bodies processing emotional trauma,
right.
right? And she got to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe not how she wanted to spend her vacation. However,
No,
right,
but it's a good indicator, right?
right.
So
Eric, I'm just going to reiterate this. I am so grateful that I get to work with you on a daily basis because it is definitely my privilege. You are such a phenomenal and
likewise.
amazing human being. And I love that the work that we are doing together and the work that you are doing is really about taking care of people at the most basic of human levels. It's not just money ever, right? It's money
No.
for how it changes people's lives. And I think that the remembrance that this is not fast and flashy, that this is about service to others,
Yeah, it's
make,
boring, right? Most days. It's
but you just nail it, dude.
so thanks.
So, all right. If you want someone like Eric to build for you so that in
The
the event
emotional
life
mess
goes
apparently today. What the
good
hell?
or bad, no, I love it. It just tells me that you are in touch with what is actually happening in these people's lives, that you, instead of shying away from the complexity, that you embrace it. And I think there are so few people that live their life like that, that give themselves permission to feel the depths of the highs and the lows with the people they're interacting with. I mean, it tells me you are 100% present.
Yeah.
And that to me, it's why I trust you with my own family, right?
Yeah.
It's that I know you're there, right? So if they're looking for you, where can they find you?
At Economics with Eric, wherever you use social media. And how about you, Mary?
At The Wealth Woman. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Specific financial concepts and advanced strategies are presented to you for educational purposes only. We cannot and do not guarantee their applicability to your individual circumstance. We encourage you to seek personalized advice from qualified professionals on all financial matters.
Provided content is for overview and is not intended and should not be relied upon as individualized tax, legal, fiduciary, or investment advice. Neither Wealth Woman, Acorn Grove, or the Wealth and Income Podcast, nor their representatives provide tax or legal advice. For answers to specific questions and before making any decision, please consult a qualified attorney or tax advisors.
All numeric examples and any individual shown are hypothetical and were used for explanatory purposes only. Actual results may vary.
Investing involves risk, which includes potential loss of principal. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Guarantees are subject to the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company.
Life insurance should be purchased by individuals that have a need to provide a death benefit to protect others with insurable interests in their lives against financial loss. Life insurance is not a retirement plan, investment, or savings account.
Not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or any governmental agency. Insurance and investment products, not a deposit, not FDIC or NCUA insured, not insured by any federal government agency, not guaranteed by any bank or credit union, may lose value.
Please visit the Wealth Woman website disclosure page for other important disclosures.